Here we are. We have arrived at the third episode of the Keystone Master Challenge, where I am going to be trying to get a brand new level 70 Balance Druid to reaching Keystone Master. To do this, I will have to get my character set up, geared, and work my way up with only pugs. In the last episode, we cleared all of LFR, managing to get our first piece of tier. After that, we started our adventure into Mythic Plus, where we managed to complete 3 dungeons to try to get some early score and some vault slots filled up. If you missed that video, then there will be a link in the top right hand corner of your screen to a playlist with all of the episodes. As you guys may know by now, if you've seen the earlier episodes, I like to set a goal for every single episode of this series. For this episode, I want to kill every LFR boss again, just like last episode. This will give us more flight stones, crests, and hopefully some more tier. And I want to try to complete a minimum of 6 Mythic Plus dungeons. This is twice as many as I did last time, and I want to do this to get some score and fill up those vault slots once again. And for my final goal, some of you in the comments were curious what I would spend my sparks of Shadowflame on, and don't worry, in this episode we will be crafting a few big upgrades. Be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. Speaking of the vault and upgrades, we are going to be opening our vault right now. For this series, we will likely be hoping for a ominous chromatic essence from the LFR rose for a while. The dungeon rose, it will change depending on what we get, but an Iridius fragment would be a huge upgrade, or really any high item level weapon, the best coming from Brackenhide Hollow. We also do desperately need one more ring, just for item level. So let's open up our vault and see what we get. Okay, so we actually got pretty lucky here. We got a Haste Mastery ring from the LFR row, which is a really great sign. There's also Verse Mastery bracers and a crit haste offhand, all from LFR. The final item that was from our Mythic Plus row was a pair of 421 item level crit mastery boots from, it seems to be Freehold, I believe. Even though the item from Mythic Plus is significantly higher in overall item level, the difference between the new ring and my old ring is actually more of a item level increase, and it has really good stats. I will basically simulate every single vault we get just to be sure, but just based off my instincts, I think the ring is going to be our best choice here. Just like I expected, the Haste Mastery ring will be our choice, and for our keystone, we got a +5 Brackenhide Hollow to start it this week. I want every episode of this series to be as unique as possible, so since I spent lots of time going over LFR in the last episode, mainly talking about my thought process so that I could hopefully help newer players if they're struggling to clear LFR. I am still going to clear LFR this week, but I'm only going to cover what drops I get and an overall summary of it just so that we can spend more time in Mythic Plus. The bosses won't be in order like last time since I queued up for all of them at the same time to try to get it done as fast as possible. The second Wing of Avarice was our first queue to pop. We took down the Assault of Zakali with relative ease. Just like last time, I asked for group leader so that I could organize the groups to make sure that it was an even split and we had a tank on each side. Next up is Rashok. While some players didn't really follow the markers I placed very well, it honestly wasn't too big of a deal. Both of these bosses didn't drop any loot that I could roll on. The last boss in this wing was Zaskarn, who finally did drop 2 items that we could actually roll on. They were 2 cloaks with some okay stats, but they did have a big increase in item level. The only problem was since these are not specific to a few classes like tier is, for example, nearly everybody and their grandma wanted them, so sadly we had lost both of those rolls. Next up is Magmarax, who finally rewarded us with a necklace and bracers that we could actually roll on. I won the roll on the bracers, but not the necklace, which I am a bit hesitant to equip these bracers just right now because our old one are best in slot stats, but I think the item level will in the end make it an upgrade. The nice thing is that we can actually catalyze these bracers at a later point, and then we will get bracers from the raid, which are haste mastery, which is what we want. So I will definitely take the item level increase. Next up is Echo of Neltharion, who we had no real problems with. He did drop a ring, and we managed to roll a whopping 8 on, so safe to say we did not win that item. On to Sarkareth, and now this is probably where we've had our best luck so far in this series take place, since pretty much most of the bosses so far have given either no loot or very little loot that we can actually roll on. So in terms of the loot that actually dropped from Sarkareth that we can roll on, it's more the same old story. Literally nothing that was usable by our Boomy. But Sarkareth can drop a Void Touch Curio, which is a personal loot drop item. I had noticed earlier on in the raid before we pulled the boss that there was a very overgeared Devastation Evoker, likely trying to get a chance at the Evoker Legendary that can drop from Sarkareth. As we killed the boss, I noticed that this guy had actually received one of these Void Touch Curios that can then be turned in for some LFR level tier. Since all of this guy's tier was a lot higher, mostly heroic, I thought I would whisper him, and maybe if I did it fast enough, I could actually get the tier token. So he traded it to me, and that's amazing, right? I can now get another piece of tier to get my 2 set, and try again next week for a 4 set. But nope, it doesn't end there. At this point, I've been doing LFR for a while now, and I had to log off. If you notice, I never actually looted the chest that appears when Sarkareth dies because I was in such a rush. When I log back into the game the next day, you can only imagine the look on my face when I check my mail and see that the postmaster had sent me another Void Touched Curio. This is some amazing luck, since this will allow us to pick whichever 2 pieces of tier we want. We can avoid the tier piece that has the worst stats and then use one of our catalyst charges on the gloves that we got from Underrot last week to receive our 4 set tier bonus. If you guys want to see a guide on how the revival catalyst works, then click on the card in the top right hand corner of your screen right now. If you're wondering, I did go back and kill the final 3 bosses in LFR, which are, ironically enough, actually the first 3 bosses if you were to start from the beginning. Nothing too worthy happened during these fights, to be honest, other than we had 1 wipe on the amalgamation chambers and some slight DPS improvements compared to last week. I didn't get any gear from this first wing, but we have completed our first goal, and that is to clear all of LFR. With our newfound shiny tier set, it is time for some upgrades. With all the raid bosses and mythic dungeons we have been doing, we have racked up a large supply of both flight stones and crests that we can put to good use. First, we upgraded our chest piece, since out of all the tier pieces, it has the best stats, and it is pretty unlikely that we're going to get a better level of tier than this LFR tier for at least a little while. Our chest is now item level 421 from 408. Next, our ring that we got from the vault, we are going to upgrade along with our necklace. The reason for that is these both once again have great stats, and we are less likely to replace them because they have really good stats. This makes them a good investment to upgrade. Our belt, helmet, gloves, bracers, and our old ring all receive small upgrades. Finally, I'm going to upgrade our weapon a little bit as well. I was going to consider just upgrading only my weapon, but upgrading it a lot more. But I am a little hesitant to put a lot of flight stones into my main hand because the stats are okay, but not great to be honest, and it is very expensive to upgrade your weapon. The reason for this is your weapon is usually your most important slot for the most part, along with maybe your trinkets. And I'm really hoping that we can get a haste mastery weapon to drop, or we might craft one. The final upgrade will just be a small upgrade to our on-use trinket from the Zarelak Caverns. Lots of our gear at this point just needs more Drake crests, so hopefully we can start to farm more of those as these videos go on. With our gear getting a massive boost, it was time to test it out, along with our new 4-piece in a Mythic Plus dungeon. With our key only being a level 5, I wanted to see if maybe we can make another big jump and get into some higher keys. To start off the video, I signed up for a level 10 Underrot, and as you will notice a lot in this video, that like the last one, whenever possible, it is very beneficial to have as many players in your party with the same gear type as you as possible. This allows for easy gear trading if somebody gets something that they don't need. Until I would say 13 to 15s, you can do this with no problems at all. So after I got into the key, our comp was a Brewmaster Monk, a Holy Paladin, 2 Havoc Demon Hunters, and myself. So a good amount of leather wearers. As for loot, we are hoping for, it would likely be the Haste Mastery ring, since they can sort of be tough to get from raids, since like I said, everybody needs them. There is also bracers and a belt, both with very good stats. As for affixes this week, we have Tyrannical, which increases bosses' health by 30%, and bosses and their minions can deal up to 15% more damage. We will also be dealing with a second affix for the first time in this series. This week it is Entangling, which is new to this season of Mythic Plus. While in combat, entangling vines periodically appear and snare players. You have a limited time to run out and break this snare, or else you will get stunned for 3 seconds. From my own experience on Warlock, this affix is mainly just an annoyance, but the limited movement can definitely lead to damage loss on Warlock. This is honestly much less of a problem that I've noticed with Boomkin, since it just has an array of instant casts and quick movement abilities. Now, with all that stuff out of the way, let's talk about how the dungeon went. I'm noticing in lots of these keys a similar problem that I have with Destruction Warlock, and that is that they aren't the best for keys that are honestly lower than 15s. They are still good, they just don't really reach their potential because their damage likes to ramp up a lot, and it's hard to reach that true potential if mobs are dying so fast. This will cause your overall damage to be a lot lower than it really should be. This is also highly affected by how your tank pulls. The bigger and more stacked up the pull will lead to a lot more DPS from everybody. When dealing with these 2 packs before the second boss, the ones that fixate on you can certainly be a pain, but with Typhoon only being a 25-second cooldown, it can nearly nullify these mobs entirely. Second boss was actually quite a close call near the end, as the group-wide damage really started to catch up to us, but we dealt with it. Solar Beam is a very strong interrupt, since it is really a one-of-a-kind, since it can affect multiple enemies at once, but it does have a longer than usual cooldown. The biggest tip that I can give you guys to maximize Solar Beam is to try to learn what abilities really are the most important to kick, especially during fortified weeks. In this pull, for example, the Withering Curse cast leaves a big dot on the group, but I would say that Shadow Bolt Volley is the more important kick if you can only pick one. As you can see here, I used my kick on the last pull, and because of this, 2 volleys go off and deal over 50% of almost everybody's health, but the tank. Luckily, these mobs died shortly after, so they didn't live long enough to get another cast off, but if this was a higher key or maybe fortified week, we would have definitely been an instant wipe. These later packs before the last boss are made tremendously easier if you can save up some astral power beforehand. Since we can use Starfall on the move, this will allow us to deal with and dodge a lot of the abilities. The final boss went well, and we managed to 2-chest our first Mythic Plus 10 with over 4 minutes to spare. This increased our Raider.io score by 82. I also chose to talk to the NPC to re-roll my key, and I managed to get a Neltharus. With that key done, we were going to go back to the group finder where we managed to get accepted into a +8 freehold. Overall, for keys, we're kind of just trying to get one of every key done just so we can get as much score as possible and try to diversify what gear we're getting. From Freehold, we are mainly after the legs that can drop since that is the worst tier piece for Balance Druid, so we want to get a pair of non-tier pants with very good stats. We had no problems at all with the first few packs before the first boss. I feel like my Eclipse usage is seeing large improvements in my opinion. The only times where I notice I definitely tend to slip up with this is after my incarnation on a boss where I'm so used to spamming Wrath, which then causes me to go into my Lunar Eclipse by accident. With this series, I'm really trying to keep in mind your guys' feedback, and I try my best to read and respond to all of the comments that I can. One of you pointed out that in Freehold, when fighting the trash pack that drops the traps, you can actually run through it with travel form to clear it for your group. This basically has no downside from what I know, and it's a neat little tip that I most likely would have never found out about on my own. After the second boss, when we pulled this crusher, I noticed that our tank didn't seem like they wanted to pull this with the patrol. This means that I had to wait on both Moonfire and Sunfire, as they can apply to nearby enemies if they are close enough. Overall, this tank was quite good with the pulls, to be honest. They were big enough and very consistent so that we spent very little time just sitting around, which in Freehold is very important during the Shark boss RP. Also, another little tip that I know from Warlock is that you can use the training dummy here to build up some astral power before the fight starts. With the Shark boss done, we made our way over to the last boss. There's a few packs before the last boss, and this pull that the tank did I've actually never seen before, where he pulled all the mobs into this very small room, but to be honest, it was quite interesting and it honestly worked out quite well. The last pull of the dungeon was maybe our worst, as it was basically doubled when we didn't need it to be at all since our percent was already at 100% for the mob count. This was just an accidental mispull by the healer, so we luckily did survive, but it was definitely a close one. We finished up the last boss with 4.5 minutes left and managed to get a 2 chest with an increase of 68 score. When I went back to the group finder, the next group that I was able to get into is a dungeon that we haven't yet seen in this series, Neltharion's Lair, a dungeon that I personally really enjoyed back in Legion. I don't really think this damage is very well suited for classes that have to ramp up in damage. This is because there's lots of small adds that have next to no health, so they tend to just die before your damage can actually really take effect. We did have some slight arguing at the first boss, which I believe is pretty much the first we've seen in this whole series. I died on the first boss when our tank didn't point the frontal at the wall. This was partially my fault as I was in kind of an awkward position, but regardless, I wasn't too worried about it. Our warrior wanted the tank to move the boss so that he had more space in melee to work with, since Rockmora drops these green puddles in the melee that you kind of have to dodge or move the boss so that you still have room. The tank kind of disagreed, felt like there was plenty of space and that it wasn't really a problem. It didn't lead to anybody leaving or anything like that, but it surely was just interesting to witness. I forgot to mention that the item that we are mainly looking for from Neltharion's Lair other than score is the Loop of Vitroluk Intent, which is a haste mastery ring. We have a mostly easy time with the second boss. The third boss is definitely a very tough boss on Tyrannical, but overall we didn't really have too many problems. Right before the last boss, I get taken from 70% health to 0% from a melee plus a swipe on the scorpions at the end of the dungeon. My assumption is that the tank lost aggro, but I'm not totally sure. I have noticed a little bit of a bad habit that I have on the last boss of this dungeon. Whenever entangling would target me, I tend to go backwards, which is too far away from the boss, and this leads to the crystal spikes not being as close as they should be. In the end, we did still manage to actually 3-chest this, and since it was our first time in this dungeon on either Fortified or Tyrannical, we managed to get 142 score, which is absolutely massive. There was a ring that did drop from us, but the stats were pretty bad, and I kept it so that when I get a ring with better stats, I can upgrade it to that level for cheaper. And nobody asked me for the ring, so I'm assuming that was alright. Now, I think it is time for some upgrades. I do want to spend 2 of my sparks of Shadowflame to improve our gear and craft some embellishments. A weapon and an offhand would likely be the biggest upgrade, but I want to hold off on these since currently it's pretty close to the next reset and I will get another vault. So I've kind of been debating whether or not I want to go with the Toxic Thorn foot wraps or the Slimy Expulsion boots. The Expulsion boots are more popular, and with a Toxic patch on another piece of crafted gear is, from what I've heard, generally considered the best combo. Since in this series I'm not allowed to get help from any friends or guildies that I would usually get to craft me this gear, I had to go to trade chat. I simply said that I was looking for a leather worker to craft the max quality 424 item level Slimy Expulsion boots. After maybe 10-15 minutes or so, I got a few whispers, and then I finally got one that agreed upon my commission of 2,000 gold. I bought all the mats beforehand just because I didn't want to have to worry about the quality of them or anything like that. To be honest, this transaction was pretty seamless. Next was to try to craft some leggings. This is because, like I said earlier, the tier pants for Druid don't have the best stats or even good stats for balance, so it is a slot that we can replace and still have 4-piece, but be confident that we will get Bis since we can give it the perfect stats for crafted gear. This means our second piece of Shadowflame crafted gear will be 424 item level Lifebound trousers with a Toxic patch embellishment. The only problem I ran into was I didn't have enough gold. My commissions were maybe a bit higher than they needed to be since I can only use gold that I have gained on this character. It makes it definitely a lot more limiting. I really had to think and brainstorm some ideas on how to make some quick gold. I could go onto YouTube, maybe find some gold farms, or maybe I could take the easy route and just dance in Goldshire. I mean, I am a night owl female after all. Nah, who am I kidding? I'm not that desperate. Yet. Anyways, I decided that I would do some dragon riding world quests and some gold world quests since they don't take long at all and they're incredibly easy, and it probably should be more than enough. While I was at it, I also stopped to kill the Zarelak Caverns world boss just in case, and of course, never lucky, so I didn't get anything. After about 30 minutes or so, we managed to get all of these dragon riding bags, and in total, once opening them all, we gained about 3,500 gold. I went back to trade chat and found somebody who was willing to make the pants for me. Once I got my new crafted gear, I wanted to see if I could get some cheap enchants that I was confident wouldn't be replaced for a reasonable amount of time. I bought a rank 3 waking stats for my chest piece since it is incredibly cheap. I also got rank 3 Watcher's Loam for my boots. Since they are crafted boots, I could get them all the way up to item level 447, which is basically best in slot. With our new gear, we are one step closer to completing all 3 of our goals today, as we have now finished crafting our gear for today's episode. I spent a little bit of time trying to get into a group with no success. I decided that I would post my level 5 Neltharus and see what people would sign up. Although it was highly unorthodox, I managed to get 4 leather wearers into my group, 3 of which were demon hunters, and our healer was slightly overgeared, so I knew that it was most likely that we could definitely handle it. One of the demon hunters that had signed up was also very overgeared, like ahead of the curve with full heroic gear overgeared. As for the dungeon, I find that Magmatus can actually sometimes be quite challenging on tyrannical weeks because it feels like a very, very long fight, but with this only being a +5, to be honest, it wasn't that bad. This group also didn't have Lust, but our damage overall was still pretty high regardless, and we had no troubles on Chargath either. Next up is another pretty hard boss, Forge Master. I know that there is a trick you can do on this boss to shadow meld one of his abilities, but I can't remember exactly which ability or when you're supposed to do it. After killing the boss, I also got the Ready for Rating 8 achievement, which you get for not getting hit by any of the abilities during the fight, so that is pretty neat. We are making our way to the final boss, who as well gave us no trouble. This fight was really simple and our single target DPS was pretty good. As you can see, our burst has improved tremendously. Lots of the trash packs in this dungeon just got completely deleted in a few seconds with having this overgeared Demon Hunter. As for loot, we are really hoping for the Magma Tusk cloak, since it is the most common and seemingly best cloak for balanced druids. And luckily enough, the super overgeared Demon Hunter managed to get the cloak, which is perfect, since he gave it to me and I was pretty excited about it overall. With that key done in no time at all, I wanted to upgrade some of my gear. I put 3 upgrades into my tier helmet and 1 into my on-use trinket. Since that Neltharus was a 3 chest, we got a +8 Vortex Pinnacle, another dungeon that we haven't ventured into in this series just yet. This does mean that in the Neltharus we didn't actually have entangling, but now that we are above a level 7 keystone, we will have entangling again, although I think we should be fine since a somewhat overgeared Beastmaster Hunter signed up. Overall, our group seemed to have pretty good knowledge of the mechanics. The one problem was we did a big pull here where the evoker who signed up with the tank went to get a few more assassins, but it did cost him his life. I'm assuming that the tank probably asked him to go grab a couple more adds. Regardless, a quick B-res and we were right back on track. My rotation this dungeon was definitely a lot better. Some of the pulls were slightly larger, which is always nice. I have definitely improved with my eclipses, but with the new 4 set, I find that sometimes on these bigger pulls I am overcapping on astral power, which is something I definitely need to fix. These packs before the final boss can really be tough, especially for groups who might not fully understand them. I personally was never targeted for the lightning, which is pretty rare, but our rogue did a great job of handling it anyways. And here we are, this dungeon as well has been pretty smooth, not that many deaths, and we're now at the last boss. I would say on Tyrannical Week, this is one of the most feared bosses in high level keys, just because it leaves very little room for error, and it has constant mechanics that you always need to be managing. Luckily, heroism had just come back up, and everybody made it out alive. We had about 2.5 minutes to spare to secure a 3 chest and 128 score, which is massive. To be completely honest, there isn't really much gear from Vortex Pinnacle that we would want, or that is really important to me. I did get a ring, but I was happy to give it away to the evoker that asked for it. Our last dungeon for today is going to be a +10 Brackenhide Hollow. This might actually be a dungeon that we try to somewhat farm for a little bit, just because it does have a really good weapon that I would absolutely love to get. If we can manage to get it, we can spend our remaining sparks to fill out lots of our off-tier slots. I was a little worried when I first joined this group, since our Windwalker Monk and Healer's gear seemed a tad low. Luckily, we got a Blood DK with alright gear. It was about similar to mine, but he came with a massive 442 item level Rep Paladin. The Paladin actually mentioned that he was helping the DK gear up. The first few pulls in the dungeon were really good, and our overall damage was actually a lot higher than usual. This tank seemed pretty good at making sure that the pulls were nice and big. The monk also told me something that I had no idea about. Some of the mobs in the early packs of the dungeon will do an ability called Rage Storm that does damage in a circle around them. You can actually use Soothe to cleanse this ability when used during the cast. I mentioned this in the first video when I was going over my talents, that there is so many small nuanced uses for the talents on the druid side of the talent tree that I'm just completely unaware of. but I'm really excited to learn all of them. The first boss did dip my overall damage down just a little bit because I am still a little squishy, and with it being Tyrannical week, when I got fixated by one of the bosses, I panicked a little bit and had to run around in bear form for safety. For some reason, I felt a little bit off this dungeon in terms of my awareness. Found that many of the patrols or how I would move my character led to bigger pulls than were intended. Sometimes the paladin would pull extra packs though, so I'm not sure if most of it was my fault or if the tank had communicated this to the paladin just like the evoker had done for the demon hunter tank in Vortex. Overall, nobody got upset or anything like that, but we did have a few close calls on the Treemouth boss, but then we proceeded to go and absolutely destroy Gutshot. And you could really tell we had definitely overpulled, as not long after that we had already hit 100% on the mob kill count. It wasn't too big of a deal though, as now we were on to the final boss. I think this might have been our best run of the week. We 3-chested it with 2 minutes left. This gave us a score increase of 98, leaving us with a total of 852. We started the week at 244, so more than tripled our score in only 6 dungeons. That is the third and final goal of today's video completed. I'm super glad with how this series is going so far, and I feel like we're actually progressing very quickly. It is now time to say goodbye for now, as we have reached the end of another episode. I just want to say that I really appreciate the support on this series. All of you guys commenting and subscribing and dropping likes really do make my day. It truly means the world. If you did enjoy this episode, then be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss the next episode, and thank you guys for watching.